Have you heard? Thanks to a Nintendo Dream interview with developers, it was revealed that Claude's real name is actually Khalid, with the name Claude being an alias or fake name. This was originally meant to be revealed in the game's story, but the developers couldn't find a chance to get it in. There was supposed to be a scene where Nader calls Claude Khalid, but they were unable to settle on the details, so it ended up being cut. Last time we discussed the game's name connection to a Chinese poem, and that the three lords, Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude, were representative of that poem's color and season symbolism, with Dimitri being the blue snow of winter, Claude being the yellow moon of autumn, and Edelgard being the red flowers of spring. The missing green winds of summer also seemed like a perfect fit for Byleth. Many of these connections to the original poem are present in both the visual imagery, colors, iconography, and crests of the Maid Lords, and they fit with the poem well. But as many of you realized last time, the Part 2 story path titles in the game actually represent some interesting deviations from these other connections. It's possible that developers didn't want to restrict the different stories of Fire Emblem Three Houses, and thus played a little loosely with the characters and their seasonal connections. Dimitri's story path is called Azure Moon, giving him the connection with the Yellow Moon of Autumn instead of Claude. This could be because of his story's more mental and emotional aspects, following his haunted and scarred mind state after the events of the tragedy of Duscur and Edelgard's betrayal. Claude's story path is called Verdant Wind, seemingly giving him more of a connection with the green winds of summer, which had visually seemed like a Byleth connection. This could be because the developers wanted Claude to represent the winds of change for Fodlan, potentially symbolizing the democratic-like elements of the Leicester Alliance, and how it could influence Fodlan and act as a new dawn for the continent, or perhaps Claude's will to promote love and unity. It could also have connections to Claude's true origins, as the Almyran soldiers are clad in green armor. Within his class progression, he also flies through the sky on a wyvern later, so there's that too. Edelgard's route, Crimson Flower, is in line with her original association with the poem, as she still represents the red flowers of spring. This has connections to fire, blood, Adrestia as the original country from which the others split off of, and her plight to unseat the church and crests, potentially culminating in the growth of new flowers and new life for Fodlan after the massive war and upset. But the hidden fourth story path, Silver Snow, the church route, seems to align Rhea and the Church of Seros with the poem's Blue Snow of Winter. This could be due to the fact that the player is metaphorically alone in the cold, aligning with none of the three lords in this route, or it could symbolize the cold reality of the church, its truths, and the world it has built around it. Even more simply put, it could also have to do with fighting to maintain Fodlan as it was before, without change, and against Edelgard's will to change it. These deviated connections from the original poem are also present in each of the Lord's special classes' mastery combat arts. Edelgard's is called Flickering Flower, which perfectly works with her symbolism. Dimitri has Paraselene, which can also be referred to as a moondog, and is an optical phenomena in the sky, consisting of bright spots on a lunar halo, caused by the refraction of moonlight by ice crystals, which is a nice nod to Fargus. Claude's is called Wind God, which is Fujin in Japanese, and a reference to the Shinto deity of the same name, and makes sense with what we've mentioned before. And lastly, Rhea, as the Immaculate One, has the skill Hoarfrost, which represents snow and ice. Thanks to Mateu-san 1999, who left a comment last time, we also know that Manuela was renamed to Miguela in the Latin American localization, likely because of Manuela being sexual slang in that region. Woohoo! A very neat detail about the mural depicting Sothis is that there are 4 crests that are scratched out. If you look closely, you'll notice that the crests that are obscured are the crests of Oben, Chevalier, Noah, and Ernest. It's explained in-universe that these crests have all been lost to the ages, at least until the Cindered Shadow students are discovered, so that was some good foreshadowing on the part of the developers. However, strangely, the crest of Timotheus is entirely visible, despite also being another one of these lost crests. Perhaps this could signify a change during development, an oversight, or a pure aesthetic anomaly. Previously, we discussed how there are hidden special bonds within the game, granting characters with deeper personal connections between each other extra might bonuses alongside the standard hit and avoid bonuses from the various support levels. However, as many of you noticed last time, several characters who have special bonds with each other don't actually have any support conversations available between them in the final game. These pairs include Bernadetta and Marianne, and Hilda and Dorothea. This may indicate that at one point in time, these characters were meant to have supports between each other. Bernadetta and Marianne have definite possibilities discussing dealing with their self-worth issues, and Dorothea and Hilda could easily fit together discussing boys or gossiping, but eventually this was scrapped during development. With the recent game updates adding DLC and more content and features, there are also some new special bonds between characters, which includes Jeritza and Mercedes, Yuri and Byleth, and Hilda and Balthus, further adding to this list. We also talked about how Hilda's appearance has changed over the course of the game's development, but as shared by Cyclone Silver, Hilda actually went through another portrait change as time went on. This thumbnail from a Japanese Fire Emblem Three Houses ad displays her with a much closer to final appearance, yet still has some differences from her final portrait art. It seems they may have had a lot of trouble settling on her final appearance, or at least there were several different rounds of revisions with artist Chinatsu Kurahana. Many players have expressed some confusion and bewilderment over the length of Edelgard's Crimson Flower story path. For what should have been one of the most important routes in the game, Crimson Flower is significantly shorter than the other routes, and does not feature as many custom assets like CG cutscenes or cinematics, lending to it feeling like an afterthought. This led many fans to believe that this story path was rushed, or didn't live up to what the developers had originally intended, and perhaps that could point to it being one of the story paths developed the latest. However, in an interview with Famitsu, developers Kuzakihara and Yokota stated, "The direction of each house was decided from the start. The Black Eagles had characters with more challenging backgrounds. The Blue Lions had more traditional characters, while the Golden Deer was full of misfits. It seems more people started with the Black Eagles." That makes sense, it was the only house with a female leader. On top of that, the route also had a hidden story branch. We kept it hidden, but the idea to have a story branch was there since the creation of the Black Eagle route. Did you have plans to implement a story branch for the other houses? No, we only decided it for the Black Eagle house and to keep it a secret. Edelgard is a character with a unique position, but we thought it would be more interesting to have two stories here. Then we implemented the triggers for it.
Both sides of time are revealed to you. What shall you do?
Shortly after the release of Fire Emblem Three Houses, in late July 2019, the game was patched to replace Byleth's original voice actor. The role of Byleth for both Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Heroes was originally given to voice actor Chris Niosi. Niosi had become a well-known voice actor after attaining popularity online for his Newgrounds and YouTube animation videos, including a series of videos called Brawl Taunts that focused on the Super Smash Bros. Series. But a number of abuse allegations about Chris from friends and former loved ones surfaced around this time, culminating in Niosi publicly apologizing for his actions and past behavior. It also appears he broke his non-disclosure agreement about his casting as Byleth by allegedly bragging about the chances of him making it into Super Smash Bros. As the character. This resulted in Nintendo blanking out his name in Fire Emblem Heroes, and then ultimately having him replaced with the voice actor Zach Aguilar, who took on the role with newly recorded voice lines that were later patched into both games. This was possible and occurred very swiftly because Byleth has a mostly silent protagonist role, since there weren't many lines of dialogue for Zach to have to record, at least nowhere near the amount of lines as the main lords or other characters within the game. In an amazing feat of irony, Byleth was indeed later added to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a DLC character, proving that had Niosi made better decisions, he would have had his dream come true. In the game code, there's an unused item called a Combined Seal that triggers exams for combined classes, a group of classes that seem to no longer exist within the release version of the game. It appears, however, that these supposed combined classes were likely later changed into master classes. The North American artbook that came with the Three Houses Seasons of Warfare Special Edition has some classes erroneously labeled as combined class in Japanese, instead of being called master class. These mislabeled classes are Gremory, Holy Knight, and Mortal Savant. The European and Japanese artbooks feature these classes labeled correctly. This implies that Gremory, Holy Knight, and Mortal Savant were originally classified as combined classes in the game. Additionally, the Falcon Knight and Wyvern Lord classes also present in the book were both labeled as Master Class, suggesting that Master Classes and combined classes would have both coexisted in the game, perhaps much like Advanced and Master Classes do today. Unfortunately, no other Master Classes are featured in the book to provide further details. There are also two versions of the Pegasus Knight class that are programmed into the game, one of which is classified as an advanced class, and the other is the usual intermediate class that the player can use. In certain places throughout the game, like in hard mode, some enemy Pegasus Knights use the advanced version of the class, like Ingrid in this mock battle screenshot from Serenes Forest. You can tell if the advanced Pegasus Knight class is being used, as the unit will have higher movement, They'll have 7 move instead of the usual 6, and will also have Lancefare as an extra class ability that intermediate Pegasus Knights don't get. The advanced version of the class also appears earlier in the class list and next to the Wyvern Rider class in the data, suggesting that it may have been planned as an advanced class to start with. This is further confirmed by the fact that the Pegasus Knight class is erroneously listed as advanced and not intermediate within the special edition artbook. If Anna dies at any point after recruiting her in your playthrough, she will instead be replaced by a young child who aspires to be like her and runs her shop. This little girl is the same girl from the Anna's Heirloom post-timeskip DLC quest, where you learn that she strives to do her absolute best to live up to the standards that Anna set for all merchants. Male Byleth's little unkempt tuft of hair on the top of his head is actually canon, and not just a stylistic flair of the Three Houses artists. It has appeared in every other incarnation of Byleth across various media, including male Byleth in Fire Emblem Heroes and male Byleth in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This hair, also known in Japanese as Ahoge, literally means foolish hair.
Your guard down! I will break you! Back to it.
Hacker and YouTuber DeathChaos discovered there was full data for several unrecruitable characters present within the code of Fire Emblem Three Houses, indicating that these characters may have originally been planned to be recruitable, but their status changed over the course of development. These characters are Sothis, Rhea, and Jeralt. These characters have growths, personal stat caps, custom spell lists, as well as voice lines for combat, critical hits, and for some, even skill mastery, weapon rank ups, and level up dialogue in battle. Jeralt even has a second set of victory and critical hit quotes. Some of these extra lines of dialogue also feature completely different intonation from how Jeralt usually behaves in the game, instead sounding ruthless and even referring to himself as the Blade Breaker, something that he never does usually. Once again, this could indicate that developers had other plans for Jeralt, perhaps in which he'd get quite angry.
The Blade Breaker's wrath.
Hey, you!
There is also full animation code present for other characters like Sothis, female Byleth, and even the Death Knight to appear in tea time, though they do not have dialogue and aren't voiced, aside from a few lines from Sothis. The Death Knight being included in the unplayable characters with tea time data was an indicator that the developers had ideas of making him playable, and true to this, he was later made recruitable on a certain route via a game update.
Hey, kid.
There was also data present for Jeralt and Rhea to be brought to tea parties, which in Rhea's case was unused until version 1.2.0 of the game, whereby a quest was added in Chapter 5 that allowed the player to invite her. Jeralt, however, still cannot be invited.
Didn't peg me as a tea drinker, did you?
There's also a mystery character still present in the data of Fire Emblem Three Houses. The 1.1.0 update for the game, which made the characters Anna and Jeritza playable, and added preliminary data for the Ashen Wolves students and Elfric, also added a new unknown character that was never properly finished. Hacker DeathChaos revealed that the character is a 17-year-old girl with the Commoner class. Her birthday is January 1st, and she has the same base stats and growth rates as Ferdinand. She was also affiliated with the Adrestian Empire, had a major crest of keyhole, and was also coded to call out voice clips that are absent in the final update. Even more interesting is that some of her data was altered during later game updates, indicating that the developers were still tinkering with the character for some reason. In version 1.2.0, her affiliation changed to the Church of Seros, and her crest changed into a major crest of flames. This character served as one of the biggest pieces of evidence that developers may have been planning to create future DLC waves after the original 4. However, that no longer appears to be the case, so this character was likely scrapped.
I won't let you pass, no matter who you are.
In Chapter 18 of Azure Moon, the Blue Lion's route, there are 2 enemy kingdom generals that are never replaced by player units. Typically, they'd be replaced if you hadn't recruited certain characters into your army, and instead they would be those characters. But in the final game, no matter who you've recruited or not, they will always remain as generic enemy generals. They are an enemy Swordmaster and an enemy Warlock with Ragnarok and Meteor spells. Of the Blue Lions, the characters that seem to closely fit these descriptions the most are Felix and Annette. As DeathChaos discovered, if you hack the game and remove Felix and Annette from your playable roster, these generals will indeed actually be replaced by both Felix and Annette, indicating at some point that these characters might not have always been guaranteed units you'd recruit on this path, or that there was a time when Felix and Annette would betray Byleth, Dimitri, and your party. These enemy versions of them also feature unused voice lines when they're engaged in combat.
Felix, get a grip! We don't need to fight!
Out of my way, Ingrid. I must defeat him.
There's even some lines from characters in the player's current party when interacting with these enemy versions of Felix and Annette. Interestingly, Felix's special lines to Dimitri seem to indicate that the current situation could be based upon the death of Dimitri's father, something that had already happened years ago in the final game.
I'll cut you down. Prepare yourself, you damn boar!
Very well. Come at me, Felix.
If you'd like to hear more of these unused lines, please check out DeathChaos' original video via the link in the description below. And as pointed out by commenter Hans Gretel, Ferdinand's last name is actually von Eyre.
I am Ferdinand von Eyre. I am Ferdinand von Eyre. I am Ferdinand von Eyre.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching, but there's plenty more Fire Emblem Three Houses trivia for us to talk about, so if you'd like to see another trivia video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. What was the most interesting bit to you? Get subscribed to Lucky Crit if you aren't yet, and be sure to follow us on Twitter and our other links for Fire Emblem news and updates. You can also join us in our Discord server if you'd like to chat more beyond this video. And thank you to all of our amazing patrons that help to make content like this possible. And I'll see you all next time.